Sanvanani dumelang thobela le kae leina la ka ke Noko and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So if you have watched my previous videos and have subscribed to my channel, you're the real MVP. Thank you so much, I appreciate it. And if you're here for the first time, you are most welcome and I hope you're going to stay. Click that subscribe button because we are on a serious mission here and you will know why as we keep going. So let's go. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about a topic that is so dear to my heart. Let me start by saying, if you've watched my previous video, you will know that I am a qualified speech and language therapist, still registered as a speech language therapist, even though I'm no longer working my 9 to 5. And so I'm going to be using the knowledge that I do have because I love this profession so much, honestly. It is so ingrained in me that I feel like I need to share. Because there are parents out there who can benefit from this information, and you might be one of those parents, or you might know a parent who would benefit from this, and if you do, please share this video. So I'm actually going to be talking about a very interesting topic, and that is why I only speak to my child in Sepedi, which is my home language. And you know, this is something that I find that people find strange. For me, it wasn't strange. It is a decision that I had made long time ago, but I see when I walk with her in the streets and the shops and people hear me speaking to this child in Sepedi and this child responds, people get surprised. Even family members get surprised that I only speak to my child in Sepedi. And my husband obviously only speaks to her in Setswana, which is his home language. And you know, this is a personal decision that I made as a speech therapist, but also as someone who absolutely loves languages and who believes in preserving our heritage. Now, guys, we all know English is inevitable. We all are exposed to English everywhere we go, in the streets, in schools, in university, in our workplaces. So for me, it was absolutely guaranteed that my child is going to learn English whether or not I teach her. But I knew for a fact that if I was not intentional about teaching her how to speak Sepedi, she's not going to pick it up anywhere else. We live in a city where nobody speaks Sepedi. Maybe if we lived in Polokwane, in Limpopo, she would get some exposure from there. But where we live, it's either people speak English or they speak Afrikaans, and those who do speak an African language speak isiXhosa mainly. There are some Sesotho speakers, but you know, it's very hard to come across them, especially in our day-to-day interactions. And so I figured I need to take this upon myself and make a conscious decision to ensure that my baby becomes multilingual. We do live in South Africa and I myself am multilingual, and trust me, it has brought me so much joy to be able to interact with almost anyone. And I say this obviously knowing that we have 11 official languages and I can probably communicate in about 5 of them, you know? So it really is such a life skill that nobody could ever take away from you, and a blessing, an inheritance, which I would love for my child to live out and to pass on to her children for generations to come. So I know that it's a conviction that not all parents have, but also because there are many challenges that may come with making this kind of decision. And I'm just going to go through a few of these challenges, and I'm going to give you some solutions as to how you can also teach your child to speak their home language if this is something that you want to do, if it's something that you've thought about, or even if it's something that you've never really thought about and you've just kind of gone with the flow, which is the English flow. And yeah, so let's go. So first of all, I know there are definitely barriers to teaching your child their home language. In my case, as I've said, my child goes to a school. She started going to school when she was 18 months old, which is not something that I wanted. I wanted her to be at home for as long as possible so that she can get that Sepedi exposure. But you know, life happens, difficulties with nannies, we had to put her in school. And the neighborhood that we live in, and I know this is true for most parents who have decided to kind of go the urbanized route, they don't have schools that speak any African languages. So she goes to a school where they speak English and a bit of Afrikaans, and so it was inevitable that she was going to learn English at school. Now, for many parents, I know they find themselves in this situation, but also we can't neglect the fact that, as I said, we live in a rainbow nation with so many African languages that in a lot of families you find that the parents speak different home languages, and you might find that either they can't decide on which language they would rather have their child speak, or you might find that they both don't even speak each other's language. So if the one parent speaks, for example, isiZulu and another one speaks Sepedi, they might decide, and they speak to each other in English, they might decide to just automatically speak to their child in English as well. Or alternatively, you find that parents feel that their language proficiency in their home language proficiency is not good enough. So maybe feeling that, oh, you know, my English is definitely better than my Sepedi, so I am more comfortable in passing that on to my children. But I can guarantee you, whatever home language proficiency you have is as much as your child will ever know if you don't impart that onto them. So I grew up in Polokwane and the exposure was Sepedi, and I'm actually so happy that my parents only let us speak Sepedi in the home, which, I mean, at some point as a teenager I was like, this doesn't make sense, everyone is speaking English, why can't we speak English at home? But growing up we never did, and even to this day I don't speak to my parents in English. And for me it is an honor because I can now communicate in Sepedi. But obviously, having been exposed to English my whole life, my English is definitely better than my Sepedi, you know. So whatever Sepedi that they imparted on me is as good as I will get, unless if I go and do Sepedi, which I did do in university. I did like a Sepedi module as part of my degree, but what did I learn? You can only learn so much from school. Even in primary school we did Sepedi as a subject, and honestly the content I'm sure if that's the only Sepedi that your child gets exposed to, it's not going to be enough for them to be able to communicate in their home or just about anywhere else for that matter. Maybe in high school Sepedi, you know, you can learn a little bit more. But even that is more difficult if you haven't had practice at home, because obviously with home languages, well, with languages in general, you will become better at it if you have spoken it at home. And so parents who speak different languages might have those challenges, and so might not speak to their children in that language. So another barrier that I found for parents is going back to the urbanization and school issue. You'll find that in some schools, parents will be told that they are supposed to only speak to their children in English at home so that their English proficiency can improve, so that their academic skills can improve. I remember in the one primary school that I went to, they used to give us what was called sutumuti, which was like a very bitter, I don't know if it was medication or what, but it was very bitter like syrup that they would give you if they caught you speaking Sepedi in school. And our parents were told to speak to us in in English at home. And I'm so glad that my parents didn't do it, because that didn't affect our academic capabilities. And I see with my child as well. I have a 2-year-old. You cannot tell me that my 2-year-old is not going to do well academically if she doesn't get English exposure at home. She's 2. And, obviously the best time to intervene and to give your child the home language exposure is as early as possible. So we started from before this baby was born. Up to this point, we don't speak to her in English, and I was clear about it at school. I actually told the teachers, and luckily, I also go to a school that is she goes to a school where they are very understanding, and I told the teachers that my child speaks Sepedi, and we are only going to be communicating to her in Sepedi at school. But I understand it's an English medium preschool creche, so it's fine. She can learn English at school, but this is what we're doing at home. And she is currently learning both languages, 3 languages really, because she's learning Setswana as well. And she is thriving because she has had a stable foundation of 1-2 languages at home and another language at school. So she can, even though she comes home and she speaks in English sometimes, well, a lot of times, because that's what English does to you. Once you get into it, you kind of delve deeper and deeper into it. And that is why it is important to start off with your home language, so that when they do start getting consumed by that English wave, they still have that home language to fall back on. But I was saying early intervention is the best intervention. But even if your child is over 5, you can still give that language input. It's just that obviously the older children get, the more they kind of develop their own kind of intuition, their own feelings of like shame and doubt, and all of these things start playing a role. And those are the things that make it more difficult, even as an adult, to learn a new language, because you start feeling insecure about your pronunciation and your sentence construction. And I say this as someone who started learning isiZulu when I was over 25. It is something that I had to kind of get very uncomfortable in and break into it. And I still have to kind of boost myself a little bit when I have to speak to especially people who I know in isiZulu, because I'm thinking, are they gonna judge me? What are they thinking of how I'm saying things? But again, if you start at a very young age, children don't have those kind of feelings. If they're mixing their English and their Zulu and their Xhosa and Chivenda, they don't know any better. They are communicating, which is the beauty of it. And now, the third reason why I found that parents don't teach their children their home language, and this one is a very sensitive one, is because of personal trauma. In a lot of, like I said, in schools, they encourage English, and some of us, I say us, as in some adults, only got exposed to English either late in primary school or in high school or even in university for the first time. And so already there is this stigma and these feelings of shame that you're harboring from either the criticism that you received. Maybe there was some bullying, maybe you had to do presentations and you always felt insecure in how you come across in English, and something that you had to learn, and it was a struggle for you. And so it's very difficult to kind of get out of those feelings and face it for what it is. And so we often find that we parent out of trauma and so you don't want your child to go through those same experiences that you went through, and to avoid them feeling those same things, you completely avoid the home language. Even if both parents are fluent in their home language, you might find that it is just a language that you decide not to impart onto your children, because English is seen as, the fancy language, as a higher upper class language, model C type of vibe. If you as a parent find yourself being in that traumatic space, there is no shame. I get it. And I too was teased about my language proficiency, but for me it was different, because I was teased about my Sepedi. Because if you hear me speak Sepedi, you will know that I'm a Sepedi first language speaker. My Sepedi accent is very Pedi, and my English accent is different from my Sepedi accent. And I remember, just to share a little bit, when I first went to a primary school out of Polokwane, which is where I initially grew up, and the children were speaking a different kind of Tswana from my Sepedi. It was Sipitori, and I actually felt ashamed, because they would laugh at how I speak Sepedi, and they'd say, "Why do you speak so tribal?" And now as an adult, when I look back, I'm so grateful for my tribal Sepedi speaking abilities. Even though what that led to was that in other primary schools and in high school, I stuck only to English, because that felt like the more acceptable language. And this is what I was getting to, that English feels more acceptable. It's praised in schools, it is praised in the home. Given our South African history as well, if you are able to communicate well in English, you come across as well educated, and there's just this hierarchy, this false hierarchy that we place around English, that we should be placing on our home languages. How incredible is it to be able to speak the language of your ancestors and be able to pass that on generationally? Wherever your child goes in the world, they will learn how to speak English. But I can promise you, they will not learn how to speak their home language in the same way. And so with that said, I want to get into some tips and tricks that we used in our home to get our child speaking Sepedi. First of all, if, for example, you are two parents who speak two different languages, you can either both speak your own home language to your child at the same time. So one parent speaks one language, the other parent speaks the other language only to the child. To each other, you can speak whatever it is you're speaking, but when you address your child, you only speak to them in that home language. Whatever it is, even if you're not as fluent as you think you should be, just that bit of impartation will go a long way. Or what you could do is one parent can speak a home language, the other one can speak English, if you really want English to be one of the languages that you teach. That way your child actually associates a language with a parent, and you will find that they respond to the one parent in that home language and to the other parent in English. And this is the same as if you have a helper or a nanny who speaks a certain language. For example, we had a Zulu speaking nanny for about 8 months, and for that 8 months she spoke to my child in Zulu. And let me tell you, even though my child was still a baby, she was, I think it was from 5 months to about 1 year and 2 months, she understood it's Zulu, and she was saying words in Zulu. Obviously after that we never had a Zulu speaking nanny again, but the fact that she was able to pick up and associate that language with that one person, but she didn't speak Zulu to us. She associated it with the nanny, and that was very incredible for me to observe that children actually do make those associations. Secondly, if you are on this journey and you're trying to teach your child, I would say get books. Get books in your language. That is the easiest way to kind of teach, and also for yourself to learn new vocabulary. There's a website that I will link below. It's called Nali Bali, and that is where I get my Sepedi books. They have books in all the South African languages. You can purchase your books there and have book reading sessions with your children. And it also makes it easier for you because you don't have to think so much. The vocabulary is there for you. But also something else that is absolutely bomb is to sing to your children in their home language. So I used to make up all sorts of songs in Sepedi because as much as I love Miss Rachel, she does not sing Sepedi songs. Sometimes I would try and translate some of her songs to Sepedi just because my child was every now and then watching her, and I figured if she can do it in English and teach so well, I can do it in Sepedi and teach my baby. And trust me, you'd be surprised at how well this works. And so I will make another video at a later stage on how exactly, or maybe just demonstrating what it looks like to read and to sing and to make up your own things in your home language to accommodate your child's learning and language abilities, specifically in our home languages. I cannot emphasize that enough. Lastly, I want to encourage you to be brave and courageous. You can do this. Children learn what you teach them, and you might find that there is resistance at first. Like if you start all of a sudden speaking to your child in Sepedi when you haven't been doing it, it'll also feel uncomfortable for you initially. And they also might be like, wait, what's going on? And what you can do is also explain to your child, because that's what we do. My child is 2, but we can explain and say, Nana, Mama speaks Sepedi, Papa speaks Setswana. And so you speak Sepedi and Setswana. And that is why we are speaking to you in this way. And we literally do. And you'll be surprised at how much children understand and how much they are willing to learn if you are willing to teach them. If there is resistance, persist. Persist. We are all resistant to change, but that doesn't mean we cannot adapt. So you can do it. I believe in you. If you have any questions regarding teaching your children to be multilingual ultimately, and especially just imparting your heritage in terms of your home language onto your child. If you have any questions, any comments, any suggestions, please go ahead and comment below. I'd love to interact with you and hear how your journey is going. And if I can encourage you more, I will definitely do so. Thank you for watching. I again always appreciate your time. I hope you learned something. Let me know, and I will definitely see you in the next exciting episode. Lots of love.